Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody joining the crew. We got just one drink that we rule them all. Hope you'd remember your thoughts. Get your Uru fingers and your middle guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword plus one. Usually when still it will get you to come. To the pit tank. To the pit tank. The Rocky Mountain pit tank.
Hi, I'm Guy,
Hi, I'm Troy,
and this is Geek Tank.
your 3-second following distance sized podcast.
I think I'm following Troy just a little too close.
Yep, you lean this way a little more.
So, yeah, I mean,
So before we
those of
started,
you who are not familiar, we both work for the same driving company teaching children how to drive, which is actually a very fulfilling, and I'm very fond of this job. I actually like it quite a bit.
I will say, on a psychological standpoint, I've been trying very hard to refer to them specifically as students, because I remember as a kid not liking being called a kid.
No.
I don't know if you've ever felt that way as a teenager when someone called you a kid. If you're like, I'm not a kid, I'm a teenager. I don't really know.
In the class, I refer to all of us as kids, so there's that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's a tricky thing to get out of once you're used to it. And it's one of those things that once you're 20 years older than somebody else, they're a kid is kind of where your brain goes. And so even further than 20 years younger than you, the more it is in your brain that they're a kid.
Right. Well,
but yes, we teach kids.
I mean, realistically, these people, these humans are 14/15.
Yeah.
So they are all kiddos.
Until they hit 21 through 25, their brains are still developing anyway.
Yep. So, but anyway.
So yes, we're driving instructors. I don't know if we are allowed to say with who, so let's not.
Let's not.
Case.
We don't need to tell them that we're with Smash 'em, Crash 'em driving school.
Yep. Run your mom over.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're driving instructors, and several years ago, I'd say that was about roughly between 18 and 20 years ago, I was a driving instructor for, I can name the company because they went out of business, Sears Driving School. Not because of me. They didn't go out of business because of me. But
not only did the driving school go out of business, I think Sears is going out of business.
Sears went out of business. Hey, Brett. But it's I worked for them for a few years, and then one of those instructors started his own business after Sears collapsed, and he had me pop in every now and then as kind of like a substitute. And he even offered when he moved out of state that he's like, hey, do you want to buy my business? And I'm like, no, not really. I do not have the executive functioning skills to run a business in that capacity. And then several years went by, and then Guy became a driving instructor, and then a few years went by, and you're like, hey, our school needs people. So yeah, now we both work for the same place. And before we dive into the driving stuff, did you want to touch on recap from our last show, since you had follow up with that, or did you want to just skip over that? Because I'm good either way.
Yeah, Alex is trapped somewhere. We're not exactly sure where.
An airport.
He told us somewhere along the line, and all of us have forgotten. But he is somewhere, and he's supposed to fly back tonight. However, his flight has been pushed back now, and he will be arriving at 3 a.m. So, well, that means that I'm not going and picking him up. Because I got work tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, we can recap a little. Last week, we talked a little bit about AI, because I had kind of surprised our group. And was he in Texas? Maybe he is.
Could be.
And I just blocked it from my mind, as I often do with Texas. So there's that. See, the funny part is I can get away with making smart-ass, sharp remarks towards Texas, because that was where my family is and where I grew up part of my time. So I get to make snarky comments towards Texas.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah, but I mean, at least I'm justified. There are some people I've met who are making Texas jokes, and they've never even been there. I'm like, well, come on, you don't know anything. It was actually, so moving back to this AI thing, I had surprised our role-playing group because I have a character who is a bard. And I had discovered through my show, one of the people who was on my daily show was talking about Suno, which is an AI music generating program. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I went and played with it a little bit, and it was amazing. Here I was writing stupid words, and you got this singer who sounds for all the world like she is earnest about this laundry detergent or whatever. I picked all kinds of weird stuff. I had them singing the warning label off of the back of my medicine over here. It was very funny because they're so earnest about it. Well, it didn't take long for me to realize that my bard should sing. That would be cool. I could write songs that my bard would sing. And so surprised everybody by doing this. I made a song and had it, I spent forever cultivating it because it takes a long time actually to make the AI do what you want it to do. So I spent some time doing that. And we talked about it last show about
where's the line drawn between using AI and staying true to not putting real artists out of work.
Right. And of course, not being a musician, that to me seemed like it was pretty harmless because I'm never going to sell these songs. Never, never, never. I mean, that's not even a thought. And B, I'm not even saying I did it. I wrote the lyrics and then AI built a song around it. That to me means I effectively made a poem.
And I will add C, had that not been a route for you to go down, you most likely would have done what we were already doing, which is going online and finding a song that has already been made by an artist that says close to what you want to say and just use it anyway and use that song.
Yeah. I mean, like I was already I kind of thought that Kate Micucci was very close, Garfunkel and Oates and that group was very close to the type of silly, weird stuff that my bard would sing. So I had sort of aimed for that.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, right now, Kate Micucci is in a period of which she is painting and not singing. So, which is fine, but she's not singing at the moment. So I'm not getting any new work out of her. So this became really fun. But then I went on to my show after this and was talking to my friend Jackson.
And you have to let everybody know that might be watching. This guy has an art show he does directly after the show.
And I was on there with my buddy Jackson, and they were talking about it, and they were kind of like, still feel like that's a breach.
Still crossing the line.
Yeah, still crossing a line, especially since effectively AI has wiped me out of this job. It's knocked me out. I'm going to continue with my comic, but I'm no longer a professional artist. I'm going to go be a professional scientist. And part of the decision-making process on that one was I've spent 10 years trying to make money as an artist, and I have now finally gotten to the $20,000 a year mark. Not even remotely enough to support myself. Not even remotely. I mean, I can't even live off of that. That's not even enough money to survive. So it's clear that begging for money and busking for money is not going to work for artists anyway. And then with the AI, there's no chance. There's just no chance. Why would you pay me $500 when you could get an AI to do the same thing and better, and for 30 seconds worth of work? So I will continue with my comics because those aren't really my artwork so much as my stories that I want to convey. And right now, AI stories suck, even ChatGPT. But no matter what, ChatGPT could never come up with creative new stuff. So I don't think that that's much of a threat for the storytellers. But it is an interesting thought of ancillary. Should I or shouldn't I use AI for other things? Not image making, but ChatGPT to write up on, I don't know, my character.
Well, you're gonna, if you were in the habit of telling your kid bedtime stories.
Right.
And you've exhausted all the ones you have in your house, and you decide one day, oh, I want to make a cute bedtime story that specifically caters to the interest of my child and includes them as the main character.
Right.
And then you could use AI to write the story, go in and cut out the bad parts and re-edit it, and then add the artwork through AI. And all of a sudden, you've got a bedtime story you're telling your child that has them as the main character.
And actually, Brent's not wrong. I have actually been doing that. I had already gotten Chat GPT to give me sports scores. It's actually was really fascinating. Sorry, please continue, Troy.
Oh, that's okay. That's where I was going. Is that if you're using the stuff for your own personal use, and it's something that you weren't going to hire someone for anyway, then it becomes it's there. Why wouldn't you use it? And it's definitely a tricky thing, because I get why the fear is there for artists, because big companies who should be hiring actual people to do stuff are now going to just be doing it this way.
Yeah.
But it's I mean, one way that I know that you and a few other artists occasionally would make money at cons is people would come up and ask you to do characters for them or draw their character from a role-playing game, which there's really no market for that anymore, because you can just go right online and I'm playing a green tiefling with large horns and has a lute, and then you've got 50 pictures of a green tiefling to choose from now.
And I actually really did do that. I even loaded my picture of Ivy in as reference, and it didn't do a good job. It actually did a really lousy job of trying. I mean, it kept making like characters that were, but anyway.
But how much did you pay for those bad jobs?
Right.
I
mean, nothing at all, of course.
Yeah, so you got what you paid.
But I mean, now Brent had brought up something, and I did do this when Chat GPT first came out, and it was fascinating. And that was, I have a mythological game in Bellatrix Rising, a mythological sports game called Kaitak. And the game has all of these weird rules. And so I loaded the rules into Chat GPT and then told it to give me a season's worth of scores, randomized. And then had it do a play-by-play of each of these games in the style of Howard Cosell and all of these things. And it was amazing. Like, these games were all of a sudden very alive. It was fascinating. And it created a whole season of, and the catcher has the ball and is running now, and will they be able to bounce it off of two walls before getting it into the actual basket, because the game has it's a ricochet game. So you have to, the points are not determined by you actually throwing the ball in the basket, but rather ricocheting it off of something to hit the basket. And so once explaining it all, like, ChatGPT was amazing about it. It was kind of terrifying. Like, and I even did, like, I did some funny stuff. I had it do one of them in the voice, or not in the style of Sarah Silverman. So there was just a whole bunch of cussing and all kinds of stuff. It was awesome. I was like, well, that works. I have to say, Sarah Silverman's one of those people whom I have both had a crush on her for a while and love her comedy. So there's that.
Well, yep. So that was your experience of getting griped at. I mean, in a way, I wanted to do the subject because of how I found it interesting that you have another perspective other than from the artist's standpoint, but from necessarily a musician standpoint, and you found a great use for it. And then so having to think back and then twist that around and look at it from the artist standpoint of like, okay, well, I get why people who can't draw really enjoy this aspect of the technology, because they get to feel like they're creating something.
And I mean, frankly, it was worth it for the looks of all the people around the table.
Yeah, I
By the
knew
way,
I knew what you were doing except for the AI part because you
right,
warned me about it, and I
but
just thought maybe you found the
you
perfect
rolled with it
song.
well too, because of course
Mhm.
the AI did not do. I told it to make a tavern song, and it made something that had a lot more drums and electric
Mhm.
guitars than taverns typically have in the medieval times. But you were like, then there's more of them, and like because it also was doing weird things, like it put. I said solo singer, and you
Mhm.
saw how well that went.
Yeah, that
There was like 3 or 4 singers all the time through the entire song, but I
yep.
was like, but the song is so good, I don't
But
want to
yeah,
toss it out and start all over again.
yeah, my improv storytelling skills came in great because
It was great.
everyone thought we pretty much planned it together
Yep,
in that. So, and that's the way the storytelling should be.
and I'm
And it,
I'm all about that. And what's funny
but
is
yeah, so
when I listened to it, I was
that,
like, it's not going to roll really well. Well, maybe I can say that she's doing her little illusion trick where she's got more than one ivy,
mhm.
you know. But that was, and that's exactly what you did.
Yep.
You brought up she has her little illusionary ivies back there singing backup. And thank goodness you didn't make me roll on the stupid magic table for it.
No.
So she'd have fireballs instead of illusionary ivies.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain points where
It's not going to affect the game.
I'm going to step away from the rules because the story makes better sense that way. That so
Yeah. Yeah, because it really would have been, we would have had to have stopped
Mhm.
the song so that she could fire a fireball or whatever
Mhm.
stupid thing,
Yeah,
But
if we were doing a bloopers reel, that'd be the bloopers reel. She goes to sing the song and turns into a llama.
spits at everybody.
Yeah. In any case, yeah, I thought that was an interesting topic, and then thought it was interesting that it got people talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that wasn't what I originally was planning on us talking tonight about, but I thought it was definitely worth going back and touching on again.
I appreciate that.
In any case, I was thinking about because I'm always thinking about driving because that's my job, and
I like
I'm
to drive.
often driving every day, so it ends up being that way. There's a
Weird.
few things that I find interesting, and it's about getting into the psychology of why do people do some of the things they do, because if they really understood the science behind it, I don't think they would do what they're doing. And how much of it is them throwing logic to the wind and doing something risky and stupid, and how much is it them not understanding how risky and stupid it is and believing what they're doing is actually safe.
Well, so we're talking about the 3-second following rule,
Following
just
distance.
so that you know what we're talking about and bring you up to speed.
Right.
If
So a
you
lot
ever
there's
go
a
to,
go
if you
ahead.
ever go to a school, sorry, if you ever
Yeah.
go to what, I'll let you get into this one. I just want to put in the background history. If you ever go to driving school, we will tell you you should follow a vehicle by 3 seconds, meaning that if a vehicle passes an object, say a tree or a fire hydrant, or maybe goes under an overpass where the shadow passes the vehicle, you count
Okay.
3 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi.
So this
If you
motorcycle
pass that
passes
object, right?
here, and then
If
you
you
count.
pass the object before 3 seconds, you're too close. And the thing is that for the most part, owning to what Troy is saying, I have often discovered that it's complacency and a little bit of cynicism that causes people to finally get rid of that. And that's because once you open up a wonderful, beautiful 3-second opening behind the car in front of you, somebody's going to go, thank you for leaving that big gap for me, and pull right in front of you, thus destroying your 3-second following distance. At which time you will have to reestablish your 3-second following distance. And that's what we say is reestablish your 3-second following distance. Well, when I was in driving school, I remember there was a whole bunch of us kids, and there were like 3 adults. And the adults were in there because they had gotten so many tickets, they had to go to driving school. And so they were grumpy to begin with. But this one guy was like, I had to take my driving school in Texas because my mom didn't want to deal with it.
Your mom.
Thanks. So she pawned me off on my dad. So I took it there. And so this one guy was like sitting there, and that's what the driving instructor was like. If someone who gets in your 3-second following distance, you want to Slow down so you establish it again. This guy goes, wait a minute. If I keep doing that, somebody else is going to get in there. And if I do that again, somebody else is going to get in there. And if I'm trying to head to Dallas, before you know it, I'm going to be in Houston. And I was like, so I say that to the kids and I tell them that story because I, of course, Mr. Foot, who was my teacher, and I'm not kidding, his name was Mr. Foot. I don't know what to say about that. What he said was, well, because he wasn't a very good teacher, he was like, so just reestablish a new one and then get back to it. My whole thing is that cynicism is what kills you on this one, because what I've seen happen is you're driving along and you open your 3-second following distance, somebody cuts you in front of you and you're like, you know what? I'm done with this. And then you just drive right up on the bumper of the people in front of you so that nobody else can get in front of you. Well, that's great, but now you get into a rear-ending accident because you didn't open up a 3-second following distance. I remember something that one of our lead drivers had said during one of the classes, and I thought this was such a great statement, and I'm stealing it from him mercilessly. He's our lead. You know who I'm talking about.
I do.
But he had said in one of the classes, he said, you can only control one zone, and that's the one directly in front of you. That's the only buffer zone you can control. You can't control the other 3. You can do your best, but you can't control the other 3. The only one you can control is the one in front of you. So if you get rid of it and you throw it out the window, you are completely unable to control your situation. And I was like, I am so stealing that. But I mean, he's a top teacher for a reason in our school. And he said that and I was like, damn, I'm stealing that. I was so stealing that. I think I even told him that. I'm like, I'm so stealing that.
Yeah, rear end collisions are the most common crash. And usually it's non-fatal because it happens in the city at like 35 miles per hour or less. And it's somebody decides to stop for the red light and the person behind them doesn't react quick enough to stop for the red light and goes right into them. Or they see it go from green to yellow and go, I can make it, and accelerate as the person in front of them stops. And then they accelerate right into the back of the person who's stopping. And it's one of those things where it's, if they just left more distance, they would not have been into a crash. And so it's like why do people drive like that? Because if you watch people out there and do your 3-second count with other folks, you'll see they are not following at 3 seconds. And it's like, well, what's the psychology there? And I remember that being something brought up before in Sears. I remember one student bringing that up and using that same kind of logic. And I said, you just went forward. You're not going in reverse to make room for more people. You are constantly making forward progress. You're just making a little bit slower than before because you're no longer speeding. You're driving the speed limit because the people who are cutting into your empty space are speeding.
Right.
And you don't need to even really slow down. Just go the speed limit. They will go faster than you and give you your 3-second distance. And it's really the kids that I see get this in their eyes when I explain it as like, if you think of you can think of driving 2 ways. One, everyone out there is against each other and we're all trying to get to our goal and nobody else can get in our way of our goal. Or you could think of it as it's a cooperative game and we're all on the same team and we win the game by none of us crashing and dying. Just like if you look at Lost Island, you either all get off the island or you all lose.
I actually stole that from you. I'm just letting you know I've stolen that. That's one of my cardinal rules.
It's the logic that people should apply. If you think everyone out here is on the same team and we're working together, then it becomes a lot easier to say, cool, I'm leaving the space for you because you are a teammate. You're a teammate of mine. And I always have sports people in my class. There's always students that play sports.
Always a sports person.
And so it's super easy to say, hey, is there a teammate that you have on your team that's not a very good player that you kind of don't like having on your team because they're not a good player? And it's always yes. I'm like, yeah, but they're on your team. So you still need to work with them on your team.
Right.
There's bad drivers out there. They're those bad teammates. We're still going to work with them.
I tell them, I tell the class every time, statistics show there's one bad driver out of 1,000. There actually aren't that many bad drivers. The problem is if you live in, Salida, Kansas, you've got 3,000 people, which means that you've got 3 bad drivers, which means that you never see these bad drivers. But you live in downtown Denver You've got 3 million people around you. That's quite a few thousand bad drivers. And they're
I
all
think
going to be in
if we're
that.
defining
So,
bad drivers as being aggressive,
aggressive, bad, not paying attention, that kind of thing.
because I would say that's a higher percentage of people who are just making sloppy mistakes. They're not bad drivers.
Well,
they're
there's
just
two statistics that
unpolished.
I'm working on. One
Okay.
is there are people who are badly trained to drive. That's 1 out of 1,000. Then there is what I call the Sarumo Kikara Uchiru rule. Even monkeys fall from trees. It's a Japanese saying because they've got these macaque monkeys in Japan who, they're very, very smart, and they get into the hot springs with them and put the towels on their heads because they know that's the rule. These macaque monkeys will suddenly fall out of a tree all of a sudden. And they stand up and they look around like, did you see that? And then they get back up into the tree. And the Japanese have a saying that says, even the best of us will make a mistake. Even the monkeys fall out of the tree. You know what I mean? And so that saying is one that I tell my kids right off the bat too, because the point being, hey, everybody's going to make a mistake. Statistically, we make a mistake once every 10,000 hours of operation. Just because our brain is so freaking complex, we just make up a boneheaded error. Sometimes that boneheaded error is we leave the milk out on the countertop. It's nothing major. You ruined a gallon of milk and you're upset about it, but nothing big happened. Sometimes it's you didn't look over your shoulder when you made a lane change. But statistically, every 10,000 hours of operation for a human being, we make a boneheaded mistake. That can happen when driving. And I even say that's one of the reasons why you have to watch out for UPS trucks and things like that, because they're running all the time driving. So their odds of hitting that 10,000th hour are higher. So
yeah,
that was just really all I was going to say was, to your point, the odds are actually not that good that the people out there are bad drivers or bad people or whatever. The odds are much better that either you ran into the one driver and it screwed up everybody else on the road, or somebody just had their 10,000th hour moment. Yeah,
there's a third category that I'd open up to your
I'm willing to observe. Teach me.
And it's drivers that for like 75 to 80% of their driving choices are good choices, but they've fallen into bad habits.
Yep.
And so it's the following too close doesn't make you a bad driver if you're going to use your first two categories, but I would put them in that category of like they've got bad habits that's setting themselves up for a situation that when it happens, they're not going to be prepared. And the reinforcer to that is it rarely happens until it happens. So if you get away with it for 5 years of your life of following one car length from another car, you're thinking, I'm a good driver. I've not been in any car wrecks. This is totally fine.
You've seen that picture going around of the airplane with all the red dots in it?
I know what you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. It's called survivorship bias. And I actually, in class 1, I tend to, because we've got a lot of room now in class 1.
Yeah.
So I tend to explain the major biases that we run into.
Oh, by the way, hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob. Yeah, I already hi bobbed him at some point.
Okay. I didn't. So
it's like a high five, except it's a high bob. It involves more beard. Anyway,
before you get into survivorship biased, we should get into our other kind of bias that we have.
Right. Our sponsorship bias.
Yes.
Because Geek Tank is sponsored by Kieran Games, Geekway Homes, the Massage Wizard, and your
mom.
Okay.
Which I hope you don't or do run into her on the road, depending on.
You don't. Yeah, it depends on how that goes.
And so anyway, survivorship bias. I actually had a student, I brought this up, and they knew all about it and had just watched the same show. And I'm like, please come up and teach the class. And they were happy to come do that. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, survivorship bias. Well, what I usually tell them is, first of all, I explain survivorship bias from the point of view of the meme that has gone around, which was in the World War II, we had an airplane called the B-17 Flying Fortress. It was a very, very powerful, very strong aircraft. And we had thousands of them, and we were sending them to England, of which they were flying over Germany and getting shot up. An amazing number of these aircraft made it back to the base with massive parts of the aircraft blown off of it. And Boeing wanted to kind of reinforce and try to figure out what to do to make it a better aircraft. So they sent paperwork around and said, every time your plane comes back with these damages, write it on this piece of paper so we can see what we can do to strengthen the areas that are getting blown off. And of course they did. And the papers come back and you can see all of these like zones that are definitely being shot up. But there's 3 conspicuous areas that have not a single hole in them. And that's the engines and the cockpit. And of course, at first, the engineers are like, good, we've armored the engines and cockpit well enough. And that was the survivorship bias because, of course, as I say to the kids, the ones that had the engines and the cockpit blown up never came home. So they were never listed. And therefore, that's the survivorship bias. I expand it by saying, you ever hear us Gen Xers say, you guys are all wimps. We all played on jungle gyms that were made of broken glass and razor blades.
Rode on the back of a pickup truck.
5 feet off the ground, there's a concrete pad. And when we fell, we just fall and get back up, set our bones, wrap it with some toilet paper, and move on. Usually tell them that kind of thing, and the kids start giggling, and I'm like, and it's because it's survivorship bias. Sure, we had all of those things. My dad used to put me and my sister in the back of the pickup and drive to the construction site on Green Mountain from Arvada on I-70. We just ride in the back of the pickup on I-70. And you think about that now, and you're just horrified. To wit, my father was actually horrified on his deathbed, saying, I cannot believe I did that to you guys. And I said, it's okay, we lived. And he goes, yeah, but what if I had blown a tire? What if I had rolled that truck? And I'm like, whoa. You didn't. We're okay. It's illegal.
You can't go back and undo it.
You don't have to worry.
The meme I'd seen too was kids in the back of a pickup truck, and the meme saying, I ran in the back of a pickup truck and I lived. And I'm like, well, that's because the ones who didn't can't make memes.
Right. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, the reason that I can say I think it's safe is because I didn't die. But there were a number of kids that are out there that never made it because the truck rolled or hit a bump and ejected the children on I-70 or whatever. And, there you were. And that happened. And so that's called survivorship bias. And, I tell them that. And then I'm like, we suffer from that. And we all do. You'll pick up your phone and your mom will be texting you, and you shouldn't text, but you pick up the phone to look at the text real quick, and you put your phone down right away, and nothing happened. Your car's not going to explode. It's not going to come apart because you picked up your phone. What's going to happen is The Final Factor, which is why I love The Final Factor as a movie, by the way. It's one of my favorites, because it's always going to be not the fact that you picked up your phone. It's that you picked up the phone while driving through a construction site with a bike next to you. And that's when somebody cuts in front of you. And that's when you end up killing the bicyclist, running into the car in there, and then both of you guys going off the road into a ditch, which tears up both vehicles and puts you in the hospital. And it's, but that one time that you picked up your phone and nothing happened, don't get cocky about it.
That feeds the monster.
Just feeds the monster. So yeah, I steal your competitive versus cooperative as one of my core 4 rules. I tell them, you do these 4 things and you can stay out of 97% of all accidents. Keep your following distance, look both ways before crossing any street, treat driving as a cooperative, not competitive sport, people, and don't impede traffic. If you do those 4 things, it can keep you out of 95% of all accidents.
I've got 3 things, which is 2 of those. It's the do your left, center, right at intersections. Basically, don't make yourself a target without knowing who's going to shoot at you.
Right.
The 3-second following is top of the list, of course. Make sure you've got room to react. The third one, because I ask 3 things of them. I say, this is Troy, the person, not Troy, the driving instructor, because driving instructors aren't people.
Right.
This is,
I know him.
Yeah, you're not one of them. I told him, this is what I hope that you can take with you for the rest of your driving experiences, is the whole 3 seconds left and right. And I said, anytime your foot goes for the brake, check that rearview mirror.
Yes.
Make sure that you are safely stopping, because it might be your best choice at that moment is to actually not stop. So if there's a truck coming up behind you and the guy's asleep or not even at the driver's seat and it's a runaway truck or they're looking at their phone or whatever, and they're not going to stop and you look forward and it's completely open intersection with no one coming from your left or right, run that red light.
You
Get
remember
out of the way.
Vicky?
I do. She was sitting at a red light at night.
No, she
Was
wasn't.
it?
She was on Peoria or on I-70 at Peoria. Do you
I thought
remember that?
If it's the semi truck with the guy asleep behind the wheel, I thought that was a nighttime crash.
It was a daytime crash. Well, I mean,
I don't.
It is now 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Both you and I could be wrong at any point here.
I also heard a third person, so I didn't hear it from Vicky directly.
Oh, I heard it from Vicky directly because we went out to the car.
Okay.
I went with her and Alex and her and Alex and me went out to the car because the car really did look like it had been hit with a can opener.
Mm-hmm.
It was bizarre.
Yeah, this is one of those. It's like, I'm at a red light. I'm safe. I can zone out. Nope.
So, yeah. But I tell that story every time because it is very important. And I probably should add that as my fifth rule. Touch the brake, the rearview mirror. You know what I mean? That should be my fifth rule.
And while sitting at a light, wait until you have. I teach them what a blade of armor means.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once you have enough cars piled up behind you, that's your blade of armor. You can feel safe about not paying attention now. Or when you're taking off at a red light and it turns green and you start to go, as long as that giant truck is moving and blocking you, it's your blade of armor.
Right.
But if it's set still, be very cautious about going forward because they might see something you don't see.
Yeah.
But the psychology, it's the bad habits. And this is what my old driving school used to, they would come at the whole thing as like, here's the good habits, here's the bad habits. And they would build, that's their version of what our foundation is, is they called it the habits. And the following distance is just a bad habit that people get into. And then when they need to stop, they can't because they didn't have themselves enough room. Yeah, there's no armor on a motorcycle.
Yeah,
I have to tell you,
I just typically tell the kids that only insane people drive motorcycles, and luckily, I don't know anyone who's that crazy ever.
I do have to say, it always makes me feel breathe a sigh of relief when I ask them who's going to drive motorcycles, and nobody raises their hands.
Yeah,
but I will get classes where people are like, "Yeah, I'm going to drive a motorcycle." I'm like, "Okay."
Well, and generally speaking, when my kids and I'm picking on Brent as well because Brent's a buddy. And so
I know plenty of people.
We're doing the friendly picking on Brent because
and I will say, and Guy will agree with me on this, most of the times the wrecks with motorcycles are not the motorcyclist's fault.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the motorcyclist any less injured or dead though.
And we go through an entire section in class 6 about motorcycles. So be aware that we work with our kids about watching for you guys, keeping an eye out for you guys, reminding them that they're in a cage that protects them and you aren't.
Yep. And that because it's a lighter vehicle, you want to give them more than 3 seconds because they can actually, if they brake correctly, they can brake faster than you.
Generally speaking, I ask 2 questions of my kids. Question number 1, how many of you guys want to drive manual? And then question number 2, how many of you guys want to drive motorcycles? And typically it's the same people. It's interesting. The ones who are wanting to drive manuals are also the ones who want to be on bikes, which makes sense to me because you kind of have to be a motorhead. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of got to be a thing.
I haven't done that cross section research because there's aren't motorcycles mostly going the way of automatic as well?
I'm not familiar enough with motorcycles. We'll have to ask Brent or John Boy because they're both motorcycle people. The last time I ever heard, only the Honda Goldwing had an automatic. And that's a long ass time ago. So for the most part, every motorcycle I've ever seen has a clutch and a throttle. So, you've got your, and it's actually funny because that slide we've got with the bikes in the rain. And it says, if you're riding in the rain, stay in the grooves. If you look on the dashboard of that motorcycle, there's a blue light. That's the neutral light. That means his bike's out of gear. And I'm like, what are you doing cruising? You're not under power at all. Because it means you're going to have to let the clutch back out while on water. So I'm kind of doing the same thing now. John Boy and Brent, both of you guys are both motorcyclists. I'm a car person. I would never want to be on a slippery surface with the vehicle in neutral because I'd have to put the vehicle back into a gear. And when I did, when when I do put it in gear, it would. Well, I think it definitely is the neutral light. Although it's interesting that yours is green, but this bike's had a blue neutral light. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point that I'm getting at is that I'd want to keep the vehicle in gear so that I wouldn't get slippage. Because, once you let the clutch out, the wheel's going to change speed. And when it does, that induces a skid if you're not careful. So I'd be really freaked out. Which, you know what? Maybe, the picture is really low res. Maybe it is their brights. Maybe they're just running the brights. My dad's motorcycle, the neutral light was blue. Because, of course, before Dad got rid of the bike, he taught me how to run it. So I'm familiar with riding a bike. I just don't. Because they terrify me. That's just it's a funny thing. All jokes aside, I have a lot of respect for bike riders because it's a tough machine to run. And I always respect any machine that's difficult to use and the people who have to manipulate the vehicle. It's one of the reasons why I like driving clutch and driving manual is because it keeps that skill sharp and it's a difficult machine. But the difficult machine has its usage. It's very useful. Although my current car is so weird. I have so current vehicle 2021 VW Jetta. That's what I'm driving right now. I got it brand new. It had 8 whole miles on it when I got it. I've never seen a car with 8 miles on the odometer before. That's just really cool. Still had plastic all over it. But this car is so weird. Like one of the things is if you let the clutch out slowly, it'll raise the throttle automatically. So you literally don't have to touch the gas pedal. Just let the clutch out slowly enough and it'll raise the throttle enough to keep the car going. I've never had a car like that.
So I was just thinking simply from a financial standpoint, when they both said that there's not, that there's only a handful of automatics, I had to dig into that because I'm like, from the money standpoint, that seemed weird to me. And from Cycle World, it's saying that on the auto market, there are only about 30 models that are still available with manual transmission and that the list shrinks every year, although most motorcyclists prefer to row their own gears. So the automatic ones have not been accepted by the motorcycle community, which makes sense because it's a new change. But the reason I thought it would be monetarily is because if you're making something just like with cars, the reason manual cars are going out of fashion is you can get way more customers buying automatic cars if you make it easy.
Yeah.
And so that's
why I say that the EVs are going to kill everything because they don't require as much maintenance and they're easier to run and simpler and faster.
And electric motorcycles technically aren't either because they have one gear.
Yeah. Well, so electric cars are only one gear too.
Yeah.
But oh man, I saw an electric motorcycle. I think that we will have a lot of fatalities with electric motorcycles.
No noise, right?
Not only no noise, but they are no self-respecting cyclist would ride an automatic. Can we make Goldwing jokes? Because I'd like to make a Goldwing joke.
I would like to point out before you do that my retired military father drives a Goldwing, and he's got injuries. So I would like to give him a pass because of his injuries and his service.
Which is all right.
He's allowed to drive an automatic.
He's allowed to drive an automatic. I usually make Goldwing jokes just because that's a monster of a motorcycle. The Goldwing is so big.
It would crush a mini car.
Oh yeah, it is such a monster motorcycle. Yeah. It's cool, but it's a monster. And so I make Goldwing jokes because it's kind of like buying an RV as your commuter car.
Mm-hmm.
Winnebago. This is my commuter vehicle.
He uses it as his touring vehicle, and gonna go get some milk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they don't have a lot of space for a battery, but that will change because the battery technology is moving quickly. But that's not the thing that worries me. What worries me is the thrust to weight ratio is so high on an electric bike that it's just too easy for you to just twist the throttle and you're doing 60, but only the back wheel. The front wheel's still doing 0 somewhere behind you. And, and that's the thing that worries me. The thrust to weight ratio on that is insane.
That the skill to control that's going to be really difficult.
It's going to be.
They're gonna have to put in governors to prevent it from.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something. But then there will be idiots who will take the governors out. And then, I mean, it's like I say, the Chevy Corvette is the most dangerous car on the road. Mostly because it has nothing at all to do with the car not being safe. The car is fine. It's just that people who are about our age, they hit their midlife crisis and they can finally afford one, and they go out and get a Corvette, and they have never driven a turbocharged 350 Chevy before. That's a monster engine.
Cars don't kill people. People driving cars kill people.
Right. So the first thing they do is wrap it around a tree.
Yep.
And that's the first thing they do. I already did my bit with fast cars. I always make the joke with the kids that now my midlife crisis is a minivan.
an EV minivan.
Yeah, no less. I'm all about my EVs, but I mean, I make that joke all the time. Like, I've already done my bit. I've already done my bit with fast cars, with big engines.
Yep.
I pulled engines. I put engines in. I've souped up cars. I did all of that. I'm done. I mean, I can't stand a car that's slow. So I don't think I really kind of, the only problem is I am a little bit concerned because the ID.4 has a lot of weird problems. So I'm worried that the ID.Buzz will also have it. So it's that or the Canoe. I am really into the Canoe as well. But either way, they're both ugly as sin, and I love it. But that's all right. That, and I shall own a K-Tora fire truck. That's my other goal in life. The little K-Truck fire trucks. I'm going to park it in my garage with my other red car, so that when the door opens, it'll just be a little fire truck in that, and I'll turn the little lights on top of my fire truck on, and it'll be that opening from that my favorite show from the 70s, Emergency.
So I have only found the international statistics for this. I could not find the just American statistics for this. But this is from February 2023. I was looking it up. This was respondents' reported frequency of being tailgated or tailgating others. The response of being tailgated by others, the never being tailgated, was 0%. So everybody's reported being tailgated. People admitting to tailgating others was 23.5%. And that was, that said they never, 23% said they never tailgate. So that'd be you and me. We'd put ourselves in that. And then it climbs its way up. But the interesting thing I found on this was looking up the excuses why people say they tailgate. And it's like, it's morning or evening commute. So therefore, because it's congested and they're going slower, that's why they're following so close. They do it during general driving.
General driving.
Fragers, slow down here. Due to congestion, due to pressure others in front of them to either move over or go faster. To prevent other drivers from merging because they don't want somebody getting in front of them. So these are all reasons why people have admitted to why they tailgate. So it's that's the one you want.
Yep.
But
so,
it's
just for John Boy here. Yeah, this is a Honda Acti as a fire truck. And they're disgustingly cute, and I really, really, really want one. There's a fire scooter.
That's for putting out campfires.
That's for putting out campfires. That's what that's for.
But there's a calculator online I occasionally pull up in class for kids, and it will say you put in how long is your drive going to be. It's like, okay, I'm going to drive. What is it about? It's about 25 miles between you and me. 25 miles. Mm-hmm. So that means that's if you did 60 the entire way, that means it would take you 1 minute. So 25 minutes, correct?
Right.
You can put in the calculator. Well, what if I go 70 miles per hour? And the difference is so minuscule to how much time you save. And it's people get in their mind that's like, but I get there so much faster. It's like, no, you don't. You don't.
John Boy, real quickly, there are companies all over the United States that import them.
Yeah,
And they
have to be
import them. Usually they import those K trucks and give them to farms and universities and stuff like that to drive around campus because they're not legal on the interstates at all or highways. So you can't actually, because they don't have airbags and safety restraints. And they also have to be older than 25 years. So you can only get the ones that are, 2002, 2005 tops, I think is, 2000, I think is the tops we can get right now. 2000 or 1999, because they'd be manufactured in 1999. So anyway, there are companies, but when they usually bring the fire trucks over, they try to sell them as fire trucks if you want them, but most people don't, so they'll strip them. And then, but every so often I have found them in these little auction houses, and they're about 10 grand. So they're actually not that expensive. It's not even that hard to get a hold of. But they're almost always manual, and they're all right-hand drive because they're Japanese. And so I would totally get one and then just drive it to the conventions, little anime conventions with the Itachas.
Park it out.
Set it
Park it
out
out there with
the
them.
lights going.
Nice.
It'd be so much fun.
Yep. I got Guy the Hot Wheel version of it.
Yep. You got me a Hot Wheels Subaru Sandbar. I still have it.
So. I hope so.
Yep. I was actually very proud of that particular one because I was astonished you could find a K truck.
Well, it was, of course, like in normal fashion. I wasn't looking for one.
Right.
It's there. It is.
There it was. So now it sits in a place of like honor because I'm like, it's a K truck. It's so cute.
And I wouldn't have known what they were if it wasn't for you. So
yeah. You would have seen them, the little cake. So the yellow plate cars. If you were in Japan in the military, then there's the white plates and the yellow plates. The yellow plate cars are what they call K cars, and they're special vehicles. They have to fit inside a box that's 11 feet by 5 feet by 7 feet, and they can't have a motor that's higher than 600 cc's. And if you have the yellow plate, you can park in the yellow plate parking spaces that have the Chinese character K, the kanji for K, which is not K, it's KEI, which stands for, or the character actually just means portable or small. But they make pickup trucks, and the pickup trucks are usually used out in the farming areas, which is why I'm so enamored with them. When I was over there, I was in Ibaraki for many years and surrounded by farms. So these little K trucks were everywhere, and they were so freaking adorable. And I love them so much. And so part of it is just that they're just so cute. I think they're adorable. So yeah, they would be the yellow plate vehicles. But yeah, the fire stations would have two normal size, like we would expect, hook and ladders, and then one of these little teeny K trucks. It was just like, and they would come out, during a fire. Here would come these big trucks with this little teeny truck in the front leading along. And it was just so dichotomatic. I don't even know what to say, but it was such a dichotomy. And of course, the Japanese don't use sirens. They still use a sound file of a chime. So these huge trucks are coming up behind you with these lights on top blinking, going bing, 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 bing. And so the first time a truck came up behind me, I had no earthly idea what that was. I'd never even heard that before. And I look in my rearview mirror, and it's a massive hook and ladder with all these lights blinking, and it's going bing, bing, bing. And I'm like, wow, that's a thing. The police cars have the same sirens that you typically hear in England. That two-tone, that dee, 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 dee. That's usually the sirens you hear from the police cars. But the fire trucks only have bells. The ambulances also have the two tones, I believe. So, no, the ambulances in Japan are the ones that have actual rising, falling sirens, as I recall now. But you can distinctly tell which vehicle is behind you because of it. They all have different sounds. And I thought that was also kind of cool because here in America, of course, everybody has just sort of the same rising, falling sound. And in England, it's all two-tone. But in Japan, it's rising, falling for the ambulance, and it's two-tone for the police, and it's a chime for the fire trucks. So, always interesting to me. I love everything about Japan, but especially K vehicles. They're so cute. So, I didn't mean to go off onto that.
Yeah, you
I
did. There's no stopping you once you go down that road.
No, and I do it with a very small vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Casa Bonita, and they had the three-wheeler, an Italian three-wheeler, and I wanted to drive it home.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think they'd notice if I just drove it home.
You remember to take your tiny pocket knife off
Right.
your keychain, right? Before
Yes,
you went
I
in?
did. I did. Totally did.
Because I'll tell this. We only have like a couple of minutes anyway, so this is a quick story to tell. For those of you who may end up going to Casa Bonita, which of course you have to get on the lottery to get into it, and they pick. It's like, you have won the lottery. You and 5 guests can come during this time, and that you pick between this day, and it must be at this time. When you go, it's like going through the airport security, but you don't have to take your shoes off. But they do walk you through a metal detector. And I have this, I don't think I actually have one here next to me, but I have this extremely tiny Swiss Army knife. Like, gosh, I would say that the blade is even shorter than a Space Marine bike from Warhammer. So the blade's like maybe a little longer than half of that. And it has little scissors and a little toothpick, of course, which got lost years ago, and then tweezers and stuff. And but it's super tiny. And they're like, you can't take that in. It's a knife. And I'm like, do you have metal knives in the restaurant? Yeah, if I'm going to stab somebody, that's the one I'm going to use. And they just stared at me. I'm like, fine, I'll go put my knife back in the car. But it's just such a stupid rule. It's like, if I was a danger, I'm going to hit someone with one of your chairs or stab them with either a fork or a knife that you have in your restaurant already. I'm not going to use something smaller than my key to stab someone.
So to answer your question, Brent, the food was acceptable, better than Taco Bell, but not as good as some of the other local restaurants here.
Yeah, it's definitely better quality than it used to be, because it used to be
much
low.
better.
It used to be lower than Taco Bell quality.
Yeah, it is much better. And but the thing that really bothered me was there's like 6 entrees, and that's all you could just choose one of 6.
Yep, and no limit. Unlimited is right. I believe it's just.
Yeah, well, but it was. I mean, it was just weird that there was only 6 things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're with a neurodivergent kid who's like, I don't think I like any of this stuff.
Yeah, where's more chicken nuggets?
Well, they did have chicken nuggets, so that was what they ordered was chicken nuggets.
And a tip: if you do go, smuggle in your own bottle of honey.
Yeah, because they can't do it anymore post COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a sad but true statement.
Oh, it's been a fun show. Thank you, John Boy, Brent, and Bob for showing up.
Yeah. Thanks for being here with us tonight. And of course, sadly, that's just all the time we have for today.
Yes, happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. I've been Guy.
I've been Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.